So I'm joined here by Conrad of Commonwealth Realm and Andy of McIntyre Productions to sort of go over our thoughts on the Nintendo press conference. To start out, we're going to be talking about what we didn't like, and then we're going to move on to what we think could have made it better overall, and then we're going to talk about the new Zelda footage that was shown off and give you our thoughts on it. Andy, would you like to start us out?
What I found the most disappointing and the most kind of heart-wrenching, really, I have a lot of criticism about this particular direct, but the one that really stood out to me the most was the Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. And a lot of people are very, very stringent upon that particular title since it was heavily implied that we would get a full-on Animal Crossing, a true Animal Crossing installment on the Wii U. Instead, we have some sort of a party game, which looks to me like a $20 particular title. I can't imagine Nintendo would try to sell this for $60 here. Other particular criticism I would want to point out is the new Metroid. I have, like, as a game, I don't really have too much of a problem with it, but the thing is, we haven't seen a Metroid game in 5 years, and we have a spin-off. I'm convinced that if Federation Force was revealed in a different time, it wouldn't receive so much hate. Like, for example, I think Federation Forces was revealed at the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm like, if it was revealed like right after, let's say, Other M, for example, it wouldn't receive as much hate. And the game looks pretty fun. I saw the Treehouse event. It looks like a fun game. It's not really a true Metroid game in the sense that there's a lot of isolation exploration, but I did not like how Nintendo marketed the game. And other than that, the direct was decent. It was very underwhelming, but that's pretty much what I have to say on it.
Yeah, in terms of the direct, I was fortunate enough to not watch it live, just like Andy did with the other guys streaming. But it was underwhelming by all means. The first thing that should just point out here is the lack of those AAA line titles for the Wii U. And it just strengthens the belief that Zelda Wii U is reaching the end of its life cycle. The Wii U is reaching the end of its life cycle, and that many games that are probably in development might be intended for a different console. But I think we'll get back to that later in the discussion, Jesse. For me, it was the problem with the Direct was how they announced games that are basically what I would call not system sellers. It won't sell more 3DSs, it won't sell more Wii U's, and that's what the two consoles desperately needs. The 3DS is doing well, of course. It sold more than 50 million units, but the Wii U needs a lot more of content. And just like Andy said, the Metroid title, I would say it's an insult to the Metroid fan base that has been waiting so long for a new proper installment in the Metroid series. And the lack of proper 3D Mario is also disappointing in the 30th anniversary of the Super Mario series.
The Animal Crossing games, not looking like a big budget AAA game that you would expect from Nintendo, especially around E3. It reminded me of more of a $40 Toad Tracker style game, to where it looks fun, it looks interesting, but it doesn't look like something that's going to take too long to beat, and it doesn't really look like it even took that long for them to make, because it looks like something that would be a side edition or side quests on a normal Animal Crossing game. And with the Metroid Blast Ball game, it seems like it's more of a spin-off to me as well compared to other Metroid games, because everyone's been waiting for a while, and there's been rumors about another Metroid Prime style game, or even a side-scrolling 2DS, not 2DS game, but 2D game, and I think people were just really looking forward to that. So whenever the new game was announced, I think it was just a big letdown for everybody that was expecting more. And with that set aside, it does look interesting, with it being a new sort of multiplayer, or having a new multiplayer style concept on it. And that looks like what most of the games they've shown off has, leaning towards the Zelda game, which we started, or which we'll talk about later. It looks more of a multiplayer style game, and so does the Animal Crossing, where you build your houses and then you share them with your friends, and it's the same thing with the Mario Maker. You build your levels, share them with your friends, And it looks like that's what Nintendo's focus is on right now.
Just at the same time, I don't want to slaughter this direct, since we got the new Star Fox with a lot of gameplay, a good trailer, a good development story with Shigeru Miyamoto. And then we also got, directly after the digital event, the Treehouse Live presentation of the game. So Star Fox was definitely the highlight of this digital event. But there were just too many low points for this direct to shine out, and the general format, it was just too much talking, too much filler compared to game announcements, which E3 is all about. It's not about talking about games, it's showing games. You need to show games, you need to show what you have in store for your consumers and for potential consumers for the next year.
And the little skits just felt like they were trying too hard. I didn't really find them funny, and I think the time would have been better used to talk more about the games, or even use the time to announce a brand new game.
I would say the biggest point of filler of the entire digital event would be them talking about Super Mario Maker. They had an entire session talking about how the level design actually worked. And the thing is, we already knew about Mario Maker. We knew plenty about it. And they already showcased a perfect gameplay demonstration at the Nintendo World Championships. That was fine. I was completely content with that particular demonstration. They didn't really need to show off Mario Maker since then. They did that wonderfully with the Nintendo World Championships, and they just went out talking about it. I believe most of the time they started talking about Super Mario Maker, and it looks fine, it looks great, but I don't really imagine why they really had a need to talk about so much about the 30th anniversary of Mario, but it's also going to be the 30th anniversary of Zelda and Metroid. I felt like Nintendo should have just advertised the digital event in a new way. I felt like the content they dished out was actually pretty substantial, but it's the way they kind of fleshed it out, which kind of disappointed me. I felt like if Nintendo kind of, in a sense, broadened their advertising goals and just tried to be more streamlined in how they present the games, it would have turned out more favorably.
Right, and I think another thing that they've sort of been focusing on is they've made it a point to announce that they're working with other third-party developers and lending out characters from their own franchises, and we sort of seen that with the Skylanders amiibo crossover with Bowser and Donkey Kong. And what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think we could see characters lent out to other games as well?
I don't care about Skylanders personally. I know it's a big thing among children or youth in general, but I think that Nintendo has a good scheme already for their amiibos, and they don't need the support through Skylanders. The amiibos are selling like hotcakes, and we see a problem with supply versus demand in terms of the amiibos, especially specific ones in particular countries. So I think that Nintendo should definitely not have included the Skylanders skit within the digital event. Instead, they should probably have talked a little bit more about what is coming to Splatoon, Mario Kart 8, if there would be something new, I don't know, or perhaps talk about Smash. I think that some part of the Smash Direct should have been included in the digital event, especially the announcements of the new characters and the announcement on the tournament mode that is coming to Smash. I think they could have excluded some of those filler stuff or content that I don't think would enhance the digital event, but include the things that they excluded, such as Earthbound Beginnings and the additions coming to Splatoon, and of course the DLC for Smash.
And I'm glad you brought up the whole amiibo situation. The thing is, I have a feeling that Nintendo is trying to milk the amiibos too much. Of course, we got the whole skit with Skylanders, but we have an entire game that revolves around amiibos, which is Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. In fact, the whole logo Amiibo Festival is gigantic, in which the actual Animal Crossing logo is on top. It's tiny in comparison. And that's the thing. They have an entire amiibo lineup for Animal Crossing. And I'm not sure what's Nintendo's future approach with Amiibo. In the past, they have been very, very stringent, and there's a ton of amiibo demand as of the moment. I'm not particularly sure whether or not this continued demand for amiibo will continue, but this whole amiibo bubble could burst if, let's say, Nintendo kind of just burst out a bunch of amiibos at the scene. The only reason why people are interested with amiibos is because they're rare, because there are not that many of them. As soon as Nintendo tries to meet that demand with a bunch of amiibos, they will lose value. And that's why I'm kind of frightened that Nintendo is going to kind of give in to these demands of all these amiibos. And if they do that, that whole amiibo bubble will like burst, and amiibos won't be as worth as they once were before.
Yeah. Going on with amiibos, there was a lot of people thinking Nintendo was going to show off an amiibo-centric game, which we sort of got with the Animal Crossing game that you mentioned, but I think people's thoughts were a Skylander style game, sort of mixed with Nintendo Land, where you play as your Mii, but depending on which amiibo you use, you can unlock costumes and levels centered around that particular amiibo. And I think that's what people were kind of expecting with the amiibo at E3, but instead we got the Animal Crossing game, which in the logo, the Animal Crossing is a lot smaller than the Amiibo Festival, so I think that's interesting. But what are your thoughts on what they could have done, or what game they could have announced to show off and then just kind of make their E3 more competitive towards Microsoft and Sony?
Yeah, the game I think that was missing was the proper Metroid title, being the 2D Metroid, since we know that the Wii U is reaching the end of its stretch, and we heard also from Reggie telling about how they are in a phase of transformation, and I think that phase of transformation is all about the pulling out of the Wii U, giving it just a proper end with the titles coming out this fall. That being Yoshi's Woolly World, Star Fox, and of course Xenoblade Chronicles X. And then there's basically no titles coming next year apart for Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem. So I think that Nintendo just want to give a proper end for the Wii U and change the focus or workforce onto the NX, and I think that most people are already working on titles for the NX, so I think that Nintendo will come back strong next year. But in terms of the game that was missing, it was definitely the 2D Metroid game that is probably being developed at this moment by Metroid's creator and director, Mr. Sakamoto.
Right, it did seem like they were sort of holding back some of the bigger titles, and maybe they were titles that were intended to be released on the Wii U, but they're trying to focus on a strong launch for the NX so it doesn't end up the same as the Wii U. And it sucks for all the people that want to stay on the Wii U or just purchase their Wii U, but overall for Nintendo I think it's the better call. But yeah, I think they're just holding most of their bigger titles that they maybe were going to announce, and they're just going to put it on the NX so it doesn't have a sort of slow start as the Nintendo Wii U did. And I think them going ahead and announcing that the NX was going to be talked about next year is a big hint towards that as well, because the major game at this point that people are looking forward to is Zelda for Wii U, and it may still come out on the Wii U, but since it's going to be the 30th anniversary for the title, it makes sense that it get pushed over to the NX or just cross-platformed like Twilight Princess. And I think seeing the success of Twilight Princess, that might be something Nintendo may do.
And you brought up the previous point that Nintendo really wants to be competitive in accordance to, let's say, Microsoft and Sony. I didn't really think they had the mindset of coming to this E3 to be competitive. If they were, they would have come up with obviously bigger guns. And the thing is, they don't want to show off anything new. As with Reggie actually mentioned the NX at the particular event, And that's the thing. Like, as you probably already have a particular notion that Nintendo is just gearing up towards the NX and making sure that system is successful. And let's face it, the Wii U is not really a successful console to begin with. It's a great piece of hardware, don't get me wrong, but financially speaking, the system doesn't really sell. And why should, let's say, Nintendo as a company really invest into a system that's obviously in its twilight years? So I'm a bit optimistic of what Nintendo has to show off in let's say next year's E3 when they actually show off hardware. And that's the thing. If they're going to show off the NX, what better way to show it off with games, with actually stuff that actually goes on it? One of the big problems with the Wii U is that when it was first revealed, there was no games that really came with it. All they had was like new Super Mario Bros. Wii U, and that's really about it. They had a couple more titles, but at least with the NX, like at this point, we have a preconceived notion that they have some AAA titles. For example, Metroid, that could be a launch title for the Wii U, and that's a heck of a launch title right there. And so I have a feeling that Nintendo didn't really want to be competitive in the first place. They were just kind of just giving the Wii U as kind of a limelight towards the next Direct.
Yeah, I think Nintendo basically lived on the flow from the Wii. They thought that the Wii would sell by itself, and then marketing failed, the console failed because it was underpowered, and finally they just and because of the lack of power and the complicated structure of the console, they also lost third-party support, which is crucial for every console if it wants to run in the long run. We see that most developers today are third-party developers, ranging from large AAA developers such as Bethesda, Ubisoft, EA, Square Enix, and Nintendo has basically no support from any of them, and that's their problem. And I think that with the NX, they are trying to build a much more powerful console that will be able to compete with the PS4, the Xbox One, and since they will probably do the change already next year, or that is why I believe, then I think that the NX will be out in a substantial amount of time before the successor of the PS4 or Xbox One are announced. So I think that the NX could be a great beginning, and that E3 2016 will be Nintendo's E3, since we will get the announcement for the NX, the reveal of the console, and announcement of the release later that fall. We will get to know that Zelda is probably a dual release, Swan Song for the Wii U and the launch title for the NX, and probably also get a Metroid announcement because it's the 30th anniversary of Metroid next year.
So we all pretty much agree that we think Nintendo held back or is holding some of their bigger titles for the launch and reveal of the NX.
Pretty much.